welcome to the Sugar and Spikes podcast, a podcast for entrepreneurs, side hustlers, and anyone ready to uplevel their career in their own damn way. I'm Des. I'm a life coach for women who get that having it all sometimes means having to balance the good and the bad, the sugar and the spikes, and all the in-between.
And I'm Tammy. I'm a compassionate yet BS-free therapist, and I work with clients to help them build skills to lead kick-ass lives.
Between the two of us, we have 4 master's degrees and thousands of hours helping people develop balance, confidence, and clarity on their terms. So let's get started. We're recording. All right. Welcome to another episode of the Sugar and Spikes podcast. Yay! I really want to put like an applause track or something in there.
You totally should.
Okay. So I'm Des. I'm your faithful, ever-present, lovely host. I'm a life coach for fantastic, fabulous, brilliant, quarter-life women that are just kind of ready to like step up, get what they want, and like legit ask for it, and live their own extraordinary life. And as is the usual, we have therapist Tammy.
Hi.
Hey. Also, for all of you listeners in podcast land, today we're doing something that I've never done before, but I'm super excited about. We're live. We're live on Facebook.
Two for what?
So, if you want to hear like the unedited version and like watch all the crazy stuff that goes on with like my dog and shit, then jump on over to Facebook, go to the Sugar and Spikes Society. It's facebook.com/groups/Sugar and Spikes Society. Then this is going to kind of become a standard thing. We're going to do these like lives and, you know, we want to be there where the people are.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just want to be there for you guys.
We want to connect with you.
So that's what's going on. So if we have like questions and stuff that come up throughout the podcast, then know that it's folks that are on live. And if you want to ask questions live, then fucking join the group, okay? So, what are we talking about today?
So we came up with a couple different things.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What do you feel like talking about? What's on your card?
Okay, so we have this new thing. We have these affirmators, and for you guys like on live, you can actually see them. Pro tip, these are how I come up with so much of my content.
Yep.
Because
awesome,
coming up with daily content is hard as fuck. And so I use these and I just kind of like rip on them after journaling and stuff. So one thing, it's funny because one thing that we were talking about addressing on the podcast was authenticity.
Yep.
One thing that I hear again and again and again from folks who are listening to the podcast specifically, and like even Kara said this when I was on her podcast, was you're just so authentic and like yourself. So we're kind of becoming known for our authenticity, and I kind of wanted to talk about that because I feel like there's starting to be this idea out there that it's a really easy thing. Yep, see, there's the dog. So we were talking about talking about that, and I drew the affirmator card, and I got my best self. I trust that when I'm doing what's best for me and being the happiest version of myself, the right sorts of relationships will appear in my life. That means I can let go of all of my worries about the future, knowing that my only job is to be happy in this moment, while simultaneously attaining a cosmic level of enlightened awareness and total psychological self-actualization. That's a lot of shit.
That is a lot of shit.
But so, yeah, we're talking about authenticity, and then we pulled the My Best Self card. So why not talk about that?
It's like a synergy, right?
Right?
Yeah.
It shows that we're totally aligned, and this is like what's meant to happen today.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot about authenticity. I know that you and I have talked about it in the past, and we've had conversations about how we've done a lot of personal work around authenticity.
Yes. Oh my God.
So much work.
All the work.
So much work. And so I think, you know, I know for myself, and I'm sure other people, it's just the idea, oh, that person's really authentic. They must just be authentic, and they haven't done any work, and they're just this spontaneously, like, authentic person.
That's legit what I used to think about a lot of people.
Yeah.
And for some people, it comes naturally.
I think so, too. I think But for me, it didn't.
No.
So
No, not at all. One thing that I think of is like, so we were talking about this in another podcast. Like I've stepped up and kind of stepped into my own and am known for being authentic, which I'm so like it makes my heart happy to hear
awesome.
that. But a few years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago, guys, like I was terrified to like speak up in front of a group. I was terrified to like speak my mind. Posting like a single comment on Facebook made me like blush because I was so anxious. Like I wanted to be in the background so much and just kind of like get through it. And like I was almost kicked out of grad school or like held back in basic counseling first year of the doctoral program. I was in a class and this teacher kind of like noticed that I wasn't interacting with the class and everything. And like, I was definitely going through some stuff. Like, I think first semester, first year, I instinctively knew that that wasn't for me.
And you're in total shock, like, oh my goodness, I'm in grad school and this is not what I expected. I don't know what I'm doing.
It's a whole thing. And everyone in the room, like, this is one thing, like, everyone in the room, like, is so skilled and has done so much. Like, you're like, well, why am I here? And all of these things.
Imposter syndrome.
Yes. So I was just like trying to get through it. And I was working like a 20-hour a week job.
Yeah.
And I didn't have space to like step up and do the things the way that the professor wanted me to the point where like it got up to the dean. And like I talk about it in some of my posts and stuff, like I played the game well enough that I was able to get through the class and come out like relatively unscathed. But guys, like this professor put a letter in my file like to go with me when I was applying for internship. And if you guys don't know the whole like internship drama, there's like
that's not a good thing.
There's a huge shortage of internships and it's really hard to place and you have to live like shiny and perfect. So anything that counts against you, like you have to account for. Like she kind of did me in from the get-go.
Totally did. I was just gonna say that. Like that's a big deal. That goes with you in your file. They have to pick who they're interviewing. They have 2 spots. They get X amount of applicants.
Yeah.
How are they going to start weeding people out? That's going to be one of the first things.
Right? Oh yeah. And so I mean, I found my way and I like left that program anyways. Yeah. But I was so nervous and anxious about being like who I was. That got me into a lot of trouble, like just in school. So when folks are like, "Oh, you're so open and authentic," it came with a fuck ton of work.
Yeah.
And I know it's been the same for you, right? Like when you were applying for internship because you continued on.
I did. So I continued on. I made it all the way to internship applications, and I know I constantly talk to you, and I talk to my mentors, I talk to my supervisors about like, how do I look? What should I say? Do I say really authentic things? Do I say the things that they're expecting? Do I look the way they're expecting? Do I look a little bit less traditional, which is kind of more the way I work and the way I like to look? Like all these things came up in my head, and these were like agonizing conversations.
Yeah.
Hours and hours and hours of conversations and decisions. Like it came down to this decision. And I don't know. It just, so a lot of internal work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is like one thing that comes up so often is people are like, "Oh, I love the color of your hair." Like even now it's, "Oh my god, your hair, like I couldn't do that." And the thing is like you and I both had our own separate process around reaching that point. Like I had always dyed my hair like in elementary school and stuff.
Yeah.
Like one of the few things my mom actually did that I would say was like mom like was she fought for me like during that time because I went to a really strict school and stuff, and she was like, "There's nothing evil about her having purple hair." So
there's not really.
I mean, gasp. But just I've always like done things different, played not necessarily by the like stricter rules, but like play by like the larger rules, right?
Yeah. So like I kind of think about you and I were both raised in different environments, but pretty conservative, right?
Yes.
And so I know that like when I think of who people want, quote unquote, I think of this very conservative model. Like that's the image that kind of comes up in my head. And so when I'm doing, but I don't fit that model.
Right.
So it becomes this agonizing, do I fit this model? Is this model even realistic? Is this really what people want? Can I just be myself? Like all these things come up, right? With something as simple as like, do I go with green hair? Do I go with black hair? Do I go with whatever, however I want to look and however I want to present myself? What are people going to think? What are the ideas they're going to form about me?
Yeah.
So it brings up a lot. It did for me anyway.
Yeah. I mean, when I was applying for jobs, I've talked about this a few times where I had like basic hair. I shopped at the Gap like a lot for like sweaters, like cardigans and things that just like so aren't my style, and I was trying to fit this like very specific view, and like I was going into human resources, like I was trying to fit like the human resources like schema of life,
right?
And what frustrated me to no end was the fact that I had all these like fiercely competitive fellowships under my belt. I had not one but two masters that I was applying with. I had all these things.
Yeah, you had all the accomplishments
and all of the experience, and yeah, and like I would get to like interviews, and I'd be dressed the part, but there was something. No matter how much I was like, I'm gonna like act like this and do all these things, and I will say the right words and make the correct gestures and blah 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 blah. There's something just like so intrinsic. Like when you suppress something so much, it's going to come out. So like in interviews and stuff, I'd be acting a way that wasn't in line with what I was presenting. Not that I was acting like inappropriate.
No,
Thank you.
all, yeah.
Not that I was acting inappropriate, but like much more myself. And I think one thing that kept me from like being moved forward was people like respond to that. Like when people see inauthenticity, they don't like it.
I know, it's so true.
It makes them question things like, well, if they're inauthentic right now, are they going to be inauthentic towards me? Like, what are we basing any sort of relationship? Is it professional or personal? Like, how are we building this relationship if we're starting off with like a shallow fake thing?
Right.
And I went through interview after interview, didn't land much until like one person was willing to take a chance on me. And at that point I was just so tired with everything. I just showed up and was like, take me as I am or don't. Like I'm done with this. But yeah, it was like a fucking 3-year process.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot, and I think you brought up a good point of how other people might see you when you're not being congruent with your authentic self. But I also think about how it feels for me.
Yes.
So, like, for me, I don't feel as confident. Suddenly, I'm not feeling as, like, grounded in my skills, grounded in the way I like to work with people, grounded in the way I interact with people.
Yeah.
I feel, like, off balance. I feel nervous. I feel anxious.
It's tiring.
It is tiring.
So tiring. And that's one thing that I've kind of started talking about lately is people are like, oh, you're so authentic. I'm like, I don't have the energy.
So true.
Like, I don't have the time or energy to do it any other way.
Yeah.
Because I've tried it. And it sucked.
Well, I think the thing that you and I have both learned is that even though we try to fit that mold, it doesn't end up having the results that we want. And so we might as well just be who we are because we end up in places that are right for us anyway.
Yeah. And
so if we could have saved ourselves all this pain and angst and all of that if we had just gone with our gut in the beginning. You know?
And, okay, so let's break that down a little bit. Okay. So there are things that tell us we need to be different. Right?
And then... You mean like messages, like cultural messages?
Yeah, like expectations.
Absolutely. Our own expectations, cultural expectations, the company we're interviewing with expectation. Yes.
But can we challenge that and say, are we making assumptions?
Yeah.
Like, so much of this is just based off of unspoken assumptions.
Absolutely. Like, things are going on in our own head.
Everyone's trying to fucking walk through life fitting into a box that, like, no one said they had to fit into.
That's so true. So true. That we're saying we think we have to fit into, right?
Yes.
And I think a lot of our conversations, we've had a lot of conversations about this, about, like, Well, whose box? Your box? Somebody else's box? Did somebody tell you that you had to fit into that box? Well, why do you think you have to fit into that box?
When you were applying for internship, how many times did I ask you, well, have you seen their dress code?
So many times. And I'm like, well, no.
Okay, so you're making assumptions.
Right.
And, like, a part of that was learned because I was one to push boundaries so much. Like, I learned when I was, like, 20 and stuff. Well, if it's not in writing, I can get away with it.
It's true. And I think also, like, if you have a lot riding on something, it can be hard to want to try and push those boundaries, even if they're boundaries that you're making up in your head because they seem awfully real to you. And you just feel like, I know that I felt with internship, like the stakes are so high.
Yeah.
I don't want to make a misstep and be like, well, I did it my way and I'm still in school for another year.
And so also, like, I don't want to say just go, you do you 100% of the time. Like, that's not necessarily what I'm saying. Like, I wrote this blog post a while ago about, like, surviving corporate world with tattoos. So, like, even with where I landed after grad school and stuff, like, I played it safe a bit in that I hid my tattoos. I had, like, normal color hair. I fit a bit of the box until I showed what I could do. And they're like, society does have some standards in terms of, like, well, I'll respect you more if you look like this. I'll respect you less if you look like this. All of these things.
Yeah.
And I did that for about 90 days, as long as I could. And then, like, straight up talked with my boss. Like, can I color my hair? I started showing my tattoos and just, like, seeing if they would say anything. Because, like, I was working for a startup, so we didn't have, like, developed rules and regulations. I was also working with a startup with international clients. So when we went to their headquarters, I covered up. And I was, like, straight up out of a Gap commercial. But that was for the moment. Like, there was this balance of, like, I'm gonna be me, and I'm gonna respect the situation I'm in, and try to, like, just navigate all that, which is messy, but I think your gut knows.
Well, I think again, it's not either or, right?
Yeah.
It's more like and. So you're like, I'm going to be authentic to myself and I'm going to kind of tone it down in this situation.
Exactly.
Right? Not get rid of it, but hold both together in a balance. And balance doesn't necessarily mean 50-50.
No.
So maybe you were 70-30 that day, but finding balance for the situation and balance for what works.
Yes.
Right? Without going all the way from one extreme or the other. Yeah.
So, yeah, and navigated all that, and you landed an internship?
I did. Yay!
And you spent some time still with, like, still conforming a bit, right?
Yeah. So I'm in a little bit more of a conservative place. We live in a little bit more conservative place. So I thought that maybe more conservative would be best, but actually I have since gone away from that, and I get better responses from the people in the organization, better responses from clients. I think just the more I've been true to myself in specific ways, the more that comes through in the work that I do and my interactions with other people. So I think in that way it's been really gratifying, but it just shows that it's like this ongoing process, right? You never get to the point, at least for me, I haven't gotten to the point yet where I don't question myself. I'm like, is this going to be okay? But then it gets to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm going to go with it this time. I'm just going to take a step and I'm going to trust and I'm going to see what happens.
Yeah. And I think the reason that, like, if I were to hypothesize, the reason you get better responses and stuff is, like, we live in such a fabricated world, like this Instagram society. Like, I say this as we have a fucking glitter filter on our lives. Like,
it's not fabricated. We really have glitter.
Everything is filtered and through this, like, fake lens. So I think the thing is like, let's acknowledge that. Like, we're all kind of rolling with that right now. So if you're trying to be something else through a filtered lens, it's gonna look like shit. Like, people are gonna see through it. They're not gonna connect with you.
It might not even be that extreme. It can just come off as like it's just not quite
It's not right, and what's up with that?
Yeah.
So then, like, to be able to, like, connect with people and stuff, you have to, like, give it as much as you can and show up as real as possible. Because people are tired of this, like, Stepford, Pinterest sort of, like, idea of what life looks like, of what anybody should act as. I don't know.
I know, and I also think that like when you show up not in that, even if that's what they were expecting, it kind of gets around that social convention and kind of paves the way to have a more authentic interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, she's not what I was expecting to walk out the door. And so you get around all those kind of built up defenses and expectations, and you can be more real with one another.
I forget what the term is, but like that's why teachers and stuff open with stories because it usurps expectations, so it breaks down immediate barriers and there's like much more connection. I learned about it in school. I forget what class, but
I remember one of our undergrad professors right now, like,
yeah,
he used to do that all the time, and I felt like I was more connected to him than I was to any of my other professors.
It relaxes you. Yeah. It
makes the other person more of a human.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all those things.
And for you, like corporate queens or entrepreneurs, like anyone that's trying to connect with people to get buy-in on anything, it's the no like trust factor. And if you're being inauthentic, people can't fucking trust you. Like my goal with our business, my goal with the podcast is to be as open and like exposed, I guess, as possible so that no one can come back and be like, you know, those girls. And then whatever.
XYZ later.
Yeah. And it's just like, no.
Well, I think also like the kind of people that I want to work with are people who are going to connect with me.
Yes.
Not people who are going to connect with an image of me or something that I'm projecting that isn't really real, because what's going to end up happening, because so much of therapy is connection, you want to establish that connection. And so I think from my point of view, at least when working with these interpersonal situations, you're going to get people that don't want to come back. You're going to get people that don't get the results maybe that you're expecting. Yeah. Whereas if you were your more authentic self, you connect with the people you're supposed to connect with, and you have that really amazing relationship, and then you can get a lot of like really beneficial work done.
When we've talked about this before, like the reason that I dropped the program was because a friggin' TA said the thing that inspires most change, or like the biggest factor for change in any therapeutic relationship, be it coach, master's level, doctorate, is the relationship.
It is.
It's totally the connection.
So the more authentic you can be, the more that connection is going to happen.
I had something else that I wanted to say about this.
Sorry.
No, I'm like, we were on a good roll, and I was like, and now I can't.
We need notes.
You know, you'd think we prep for this.
But no.
No.
These are really like, and I think, you know, one of the reasons people connect with the conversations we're having now is that these are the conversations we have with each other. Like, we have these conversations not on a podcast, just on a Saturday night, like hanging out, like.
Oh, seriously? Like 20 minutes ago, we had this one conversation about school where I was like, I wish we were recording.
I know.
Because, like, nothing was super personal, and there was, like, so much, like, good stuff. Yeah. But yeah, like, I don't know. We don't, if it wasn't clear, we don't prep for this.
I don't know if we should say that. But we don't. I mean, we generally prep in terms of, like, what's the topic? Yeah. And then we go from there.
Yeah. And we just let it lead. Which I feel like is fair.
Yeah. That's who we are. We're not over-preparers.
No.
So we're being true to ourselves.
Well, okay. Couple things. Okay. I don't think this is what I was thinking, but a couple things. Okay. One, we tried that.
Yep.
It doesn't work.
No, it was awful.
It feels awful.
Oh my goodness. So, I could not have been more nervous and like uptight and like, this is terrible. No. So like on the smaller scale, we tried that. Also on the bigger scale, like those of you that may have been with me for a while or heard a bit of like the bigger backstory, is we tried to like come out as like a company. Like beyond a business, like an actual company. And that was when we were trying to put it, when we were instilling filters on ourselves, you know, and like we wanted to do professional headshots, and we had all of these like on brand lay flats. Oh, that's right.
And like we had a different URL and all of these things. And the thing was, the moment that was ready, that we had something ready to put out to the public,
we didn't.
Well, I was like, I don't know who I'm talking to.
Right.
Like, I can't write marketing messaging for this because it there's nothing behind it.
Well, and I think it looked really pretty.
Yeah.
Right? So the surface was there.
It looked like a template. Like, it looked like something that I would have selected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So even that and our attempts to launch that was work we did around our own authenticity.
Yes.
Right?
That was one thing I wanted to get to. Like, if you are an entrepreneur, or if you're, like, looking for a blog to launch, or anything like that that's in the online space, there's a certain pressure to, like, create a brand or this idea. And I had this idea, I think you had it too, like, we were kind of in line with this, was, well, there's so many people putting themselves out there. We're gonna come up as a brand, and we're gonna be professional.
Super professional.
And it's gonna look better, and it's gonna be better. No. Like, A, there's a reason so many people are just rolling with their names. But B, like, you have to have someone to connect with. And if you think about these big brands, Target has Spot, which is a dog.
Totally.
Amazon has the smiley face on their packaging. Like, I've read so many things about the anthropomorphization of brands. That is a $10 word, you guys.
And it's a total thing.
But, like, brands know this, so they revert back to trying to personalize themselves.
Trying to form connection.
Yes. Yeah. So if you have something that you want to start and launch, do it as yourself. The brand and stuff can come. Like, and it can become, like, this bigger idea.
Yeah.
But people are going to connect with you, especially as a startup.
I agree. So that's our take on authenticity. Yeah. It takes work. It's an ongoing process.
If people are like, well, I feel like I want to be more authentic in my life, like...
So what does that mean? Yeah. Right? So what gets in the way? What's your idea? Like, in what way do you feel like you're not congruent with being who you are?
Yeah. Right? So start to notice the times that you feel like you want that more. Yeah. What's making you feel like that? And then, like, one possible shift. Like, maybe wearing, like, a cool necklace or something that's more in line with who you are. If you, like, have to wear, like, office attire. Or, I mean, I don't know. But, like, notice when it comes up.
And what's one small change that you can make to make you more in line with who you feel is more yourself.
And the more small steps you take, the bigger it becomes and the easier it is.
Absolutely.
All right. That's what we got for today. If you have any questions, I'm going to be on the computer for a couple more minutes. And yeah, that's all for the podcast. I am ending that wraps up this episode of the Sugar and Spikes podcast. Thanks so much for listening. We'd also like to thank Forget the Whale for use of their song Move Along as our theme music. If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe, share, and let the whole world know how good this shit is by leaving a review. It would mean so, so, so much. Also, don't forget to get your free stress layer training by going to DesireeW.com and clicking on Slay Your Stress. You'll also find a link to that in the show notes below. Till next time, and remember to stay unavailable for fuckery.